Hello everyone. For my project, I chose to look at a research article that uses action research to develop a professional development and coaching package for educators, teachers within inclusive reading instruction. Okay, so my introduction to my problem, the context or the setting were in classrooms, specifically those that are inclusive. So pretty much that covers all classrooms today, where students with intellectual disabilities learn right alongside general education students. So there is that push in there. The problem is that oftentimes teachers have really hard time implementing evidence-based practices or EBPs on a consistent basis. I think one of the hardest things as a teacher is just making sure that we are being consistent in everything that we do. And supports and coaching are inconsistent, and there is a need for structured professional development and a coaching model as well. And so the purpose of this study was to create, implement, and evaluate a professional development and coaching model in multiple schools. And I will get to this in a bit, but they used one school for the study. They used multiple schools for the study, actually. It was one district that they used, but they used action research cycles to refine the plans based on results and feedback. So looking at related literature and first looking at previous research done, it shows that the effectiveness of professional development sessions and events and coaching and improving teacher practice, most notably for those evidence-based practices, there's a lot of effectiveness with that. And the research done in this study that's in this presentation shows that one-off PD is less effective without coaching as a follow-up. So there has to be coaching as well as those professional development events taking place. Previous research also shows action research as a method for practitioner inquiry. So obviously there is a history of using action research and the effectiveness of it, and that the reflective cycles allow for adaptation and refinement in real context, so those real classroom settings. And each author from the study draws on that action research aspect and tradition. Regarding inclusive education challenges, there are prior studies on barriers to inclusivity in classrooms. And some of those barriers are lack of support and consistency, like I mentioned earlier, and also a need for changes or adaptation. And those provide justification for intervention on this topic. And then the justification is that there is limited research out there in the world that shows how to systematically develop a professional development and a coaching model by way of action research, specifically in inclusive settings, so those classrooms. The research questions from the study, there were 4. What is the impact of EBP, professional development, and coaching on educators' ability to implement those evidence-based practices during reading comprehension instruction, which is very useful for me as a reading teacher. Second one was, what is the impact of the educator implementation of evidence-based practices in special education settings on student reading comprehension outcomes? The third question is just the same thing, but it's asking the impact in inclusive settings. And then fourth one is, what is the usability and acceptability of evidence-based practices, professional development, and coaching by educators? So the methods used was an interactive action research model. The intervention went through cycles of planning, acting, observing, reflecting, and revising, which are obviously all the parts of the cycle. The participants were 5 public schools. There were 3 elementary and 2 middle schools from one large urban school system in southeastern United States. And these included general and special education teachers, paraprofessionals, and instructional coaches. The professional development events and coaching support took place, as well as development of scaffolds and resources to support the adaptation of those practices in the inclusive classrooms. The data was collected through several different methods. This included surveys on feedback from teachers, classroom observations, interviews with educators and other school personnel, usage logs, and student outcome data if it was applicable. And then the analysis of the data / research cycle refinement. After each cycle of the process, researchers used in the study, they used the collected data to refine and adapt the professional development and the coaching model. And this looked like scaffolding, changing the schedule, and frequency of coaching. There were many results that took place from this study. The model was generally successful. Teachers were able to improve the fidelity of those EBPs over time. Some of the schools or teachers needed modifications to reach the desired fidelity, and the feedback from teachers about what worked and what did not work definitely helped shape improvements. And then there were adjustments that occurred in coaching schedules, scaffolding supports, feedback cycles, and then additional resources were developed to support co-planning between different school personnel and changes in instruction given, especially with an emphasis on reading. Speaking of reading, the progress on reading comprehension, there were 30 total students that they looked at for the study, 17 elementary and 13 middle school students. They completed both pre-test and post-tests. The results supported that the students' literacy performance increased over time overall, and that their literacy performances in the pre-tests were significantly lower than the post-tests. So their performances regarding literacy and reading comprehension were higher in the post-test compared to the pre-test. And then my discussion questions are right here. And here's my reference. Thank you so much for listening.